For today's project, I'm working on Simplicity 8017, a vintage reproduction pattern from the 1960s of a cape. To begin my cape project, I'm attaching the interfacing to the upper collar. You can use a sew-in interfacing like I'm using here, or you can use an iron-on interfacing. I'm just using what I have in my stash. Once I'm done with this, I'm going to attach the upper collar to the under collar. And I will go ahead and say that for this project, I did not follow the directions exactly. If you've been watching my videos, then you know that I generally don't follow the paper directions to the T unless for some reason I'm not really familiar with what I'm working on. But in this case, I went ahead and did the construction pretty much the way that I wanted to. So the collar piece is going to be different the way I did it as opposed to how they tell you to do it in the directions, and I will address that later on in the video. So once I have attached them, I am just trimming my corners and I am grading the seams, and the reason I'm doing that is because I chose a wool fabric to do this cape out of, and when I turn this inside out and press it, it's going to help the seams to lay flat or flatter. So for this, I ended up not using a point turner. Generally speaking, I would use a point turner when I am doing a collar, but because it's wool and because of just the overall thickness of the fabric, I didn't need to do that. So I was just able to use my hands. And I'm going to press this collar down and then go on to the next step. And overall, putting this together in general was very simple. I try to minimize getting up and down, so I have all of my pieces pinned together at the same time. So when I say that, what I mean is you can see the entire garment is pinned together, and I'm just going to go through and sew everything at once. This is a good time-saving tip. And here you can see that I am working on the lining, and next I'll end up working on the outer fabric. So you can see, you can see that I did not finish the armhole openings, and I will address that later on in the video. So here I am with the outer portion of the cape, just attaching just the same way that I did with the lining, and I'm just going through, everything is pinned together so I can do it all in one sitting. All right, so I have all of my seams pressed at this point, and I have set my collar the way that I want to set it, and I am not following the directions that were included with the actual pattern. So what I'm gonna explain it to you how they want you to do it in the pattern, but I'm also gonna show you how I've decided to do it. So it's really no secret that a lot of times patterns can be very confusing, and what they want you to do is, so here's my front facing, here's my back facing piece, and here's my collar, upper, lower, the actual interfacing is attached to the upper, and the idea was that this upper would be attached to the back facing, and then the under collar would be attached secondary. Well, I didn't do that. I don't think that I'm gonna like the bulk that is created as a result of that. So what I decided to do instead was to sandwich it between my facing and the actual back of the cape. So I'm gonna go ahead and pin this in, and then I'll show you, I'll actually show you what I'm talking about. So I have it pinned in, and I am just showing you how I'm gonna do this. So this is the right side out, and then this is my full collar piece. So you've got your upper collar and the lower collar. And like I said, I'm not doing this the way that it's been instructed, but that's because I'm trying to minimize bulk. This wool that I'm using is pretty thick, and I don't want to create unnecessary bulk when I don't have to. So what I'm doing now is I'm just taking my facing pieces and I'm going to pin them in over top of my actual collar piece, so that once I finish this is going to get flipped inside, and then it will be finished, and I'll be able to attach the lining to the inside. So I have not done the lining yet. This is still the outer layer, and once I get this in, and I will go ahead and just stitch that in off camera, and then I will show you how I'm going to insert the lining. And here it is all finished up. So I've already pressed it, and you can see nice and clean. So this works out pretty well for a wool option, because this wool I think is 18 ounces. I can't remember exactly, but it's a pretty thick wool, so I don't want to be creating bulk where it doesn't need to be. So what I would have done if I had followed the pattern instructions, I would have sewn this facing piece to this piece, which is the upper collar. Then the upper collar would have been sewn to the back collar, under collar, and then that would have been turned under and sewn to the actual back. But with this, I have just taken my collar and I have pinned it between my facing and my back, stitched it in. You can see I've got all of the edges concealed and all pressed out, and now I am going to go ahead and put the liner piece in, and then I will show you what that looks like with it being pinned in, and then get that sewn in. All right, so I just put my liner in, and I'm taking a look. So these are where the armholes are. And no, I did not finish this portion, because this is going to be tucked under and then stitched down by hand. And I'm just kind of playing around with it, because this is the second piece of this relatively simple pattern that I was like, what do they actually want you to do? So, okay, so I'll just show you. Number one, the pieces didn't line up, so not sure if that's my fault or what, but I'm gonna fix it. So I did not finish these because they'll be finished by hand, but I'm thinking, based off of what the pattern picture vaguely looks like, and if you have read a pattern before, you know what I'm talking about when I say vaguely looks like. I think what they want you to do is something like this. So it creates more of an opening. So your arm doesn't get caught up. I don't like that. I am not crazy about that. I will definitely like the idea of my wool coming through on both sides, just because it'll be, number one, this wool can act like a tape of sorts, and then I can just bind these edges and that will look more finished. I don't know. I'm gonna play around with this, see how much I like it, and then I will show you what I end up deciding to do. But what I am gonna do for sure first is I'm gonna take this facing and I am going to pin it to this edge. I'm gonna go ahead and pin it all the way around, so, you know, bottom edge all the way around the neck and then down the other side. I'll pin that and I will get all of this stitched down, and then we'll deal with these armholes. So now I have the lining sewn in to the facing all the way around. You can see. And now I'm gonna work on these armhole openings. So I just have this pinned here, and I'm still deciding on whether or not I want to finish the edges of this wool. I probably will. I'm just not sure exactly what, I don't know, maybe I'll turn it under. It might not be too thick to turn under, but I have it pinned up so that it's clean, looks clean, and I have a better idea now. And I can try this on, see how it fits. And the pattern does call for a pocket. The pocket is supposed to go right at the bottom of this armhole opening, so I'm not sure that I'm going to do that. We'll see. So here's what I decided to do, because there was quite a bit. I just folded this under, and then I'm going to just hand stitch this in. The top has enough play in it so that I can actually just bring the lining down a little bit and stitch that onto the top of the opening. And then on the bottom here, I've just got it concealed within the lining, the wool that is. So I'm gonna test this out. I'm gonna go ahead and do a fitting test to make sure nothing is pulling from the outside strangely. Here's the other side. And then as long as that's good, then I will go ahead, stitch this down, and this will, and here's the finished product. As you can see, I did covered buttons, which I will do a separate tutorial on my website for these. This is just a button kit that I ordered from the sewing supplier. Very simple, and actually I'm kind of surprised that I was able to do these with this wool. Sometimes it's a little too thick to be able to fit it into the actual kit, but worked out on this one, so that's great. And then I did my buttonholes by hand, and I will also do a separate tutorial on that, and that will also be on the website. And I'm going to just shut this off real quick and do the inside. Here's the inside, and here is how these turned out. Now, obviously, with hand stitching, the more you do it, the better you get, and believe me, this is better than it used to be. So sometimes you can see the stitches and sometimes you can't. That's just the way it goes. But overall, I'm very happy with how this turned out. The only real challenge with this fabric was making sure that my pattern matched up, and overall I'd say that it's a pretty good fit. So that is my finished cape. To see more detailed pictures of this finished cape and to see behind the scenes tutorials on how I did my buttonholes and the buttonhole kit, you can visit my website www.greenacrevintage.com.